It's April along the northern coast of Lake Huron. Here, in the St. Joseph Channel, winter has only just retreated. Patches of snow still remain in some places, but under the strengthening sun, the spring melt is on. Rivers are overflowing as water from fields and forests rush downhill towards the lake. Inland, the sounds of songbirds begin to fill the air, as migrants from the south make their way to summer breeding grounds. One new arrival is familiar to anyone who watches closely for signs of spring: the American robin. Robins are the largest and most common of the thrushes, a group of birds well known for their beautiful singing voices. Robins are ground foragers. As the snow melts, they invade fields, open forests, and lawns in the search for earthworms and insects. They are among the first birds to arrive in the north in spring. As they forage, they flip bark, leaves, and, in this case, even dung, in their search for food. As spring progresses and more robins arrive along with other ground foraging birds, feeding space can get crowded. Attempted thievery is common. On the large expanses of agricultural fields, other birds like these sandhill cranes begin to arrive. Flocks of snow buntings are passing through as well. They have been wintering in the area, which seems like the south for them. They spend their summer in their breeding grounds on the northern tundra. On the rivers and lakes, migratory water birds have begun to arrive. In some places, they appear by the thousands. Goldeneyes, mallards, American widgeons, buffleheads, and many other species crowd the shorelines on their way to breeding grounds. Many, like these ringneck ducks, are divers. They are well equipped for swimming underwater, where they forage for aquatic insects and small fish. But feeding isn't the only thing on their minds. It's the breeding season, and for the males, it's time to find a mate. Ringneck ducks aren't monogamous. They form new pairs every spring. The more sharply marked males must compete for females. Competitions are sometimes violent. But this time, a slight show of aggression is all that's needed. This female is taken. In the inland forests, isolated ponds have almost completely thawed, allowing a different creature to begin its mating rituals. Wood frogs like this one are the first frogs to breed in spring. Males take to the shallows and call together in a chorus. They defend a small territory from which to call. Males often clash in territorial battles. The winners keep their spots. The losers are forced to move on. This male has won a mate. He will hold her in a grip called amplexus until she is ready to spawn. Females usually place their eggs in groups close to the surface, on sticks and other debris. These masses can have eggs numbering into the thousands. And they're not alone. These are salamander eggs. In Ontario, there are several species that will deposit their eggs in fishless forest ponds, often the same ponds as wood frogs. These eggs belong to blue-spotted salamanders, the smallest Canadian mole salamander. Every spring they gather around vernal ponds soon after the ice has melted. Most spawning is done at night. Soon after, the salamanders return to the forest, where they spend most of their time underground. The entire process can be over in less than a week. The eggs will hatch in a month, and the juveniles will leave the ponds by late summer. They will join their parents in the forest, only rarely to be seen again. In a larger, more permanent pond, a more aquatic creature has begun to awaken. This one prefers not to leave the water if it can be avoided. A snapping turtle. The water is still near freezing, and she isn't as cold adapted as wood frogs and salamanders. So for now, she basks in the shallows. The bright spring sun will warm her soon enough. Painted turtles too have emerged from hibernation. They aren't as wary of basking in the open as snappers. Large groups will often gather in the warmest spots. They don't mind sharing. Other pond dwellers are out enjoying the sun as well. This is a rich ecosystem, home to many diverse species. Much of the forest in this region has been cleared to make room for farmland. In the early spring, however, the fields are empty of crops, a good place for wild turkeys to forage. But around most fields is a dangerous obstacle. The turkeys often have to cross the highways and back roads that crisscross their habitat. It can be a dangerous gamble. Fortunately, these game birds are smarter than most people think, and most often find their way safely across. Wild turkeys are new to this area, but they're adapting to it well. At the edge of an old hayfield, a red squirrel spots danger. It rushes up a tree and gives an alarm call. Just below is a porcupine, feeding on new grass shoots. But it's not what the squirrel is so upset about. On the other side of the field, something is moving out from behind cover. A red fox. The porcupine is blind to the danger. It has an excellent sense of smell, but bad eyesight, and the fox is downwind. Away from the trees, it would be hard to escape the much faster predator, but its large, sharp quills make it too well armored for a fox to tackle easily, and the squirrel is already on the alert. The fox is after other prey. Foxes are experts at catching voles and field mice in their runways beneath the dead grass. They can catch up to 2 pounds of small prey per day. However, they're far from the largest predators in the area. This one takes a quick look around before stopping to enjoy its meal. As April turns to May, more migrant birds begin to arrive. There are sparrows, thrushes, hawks and falcons, and cormorants, to name a few. Many hundreds of species migrate to or pass through northern Ontario in the spring, but not all birds left for the winter. This red-breasted nuthatch is a year-round resident. In winter, they flock and forage with chickadees and other small songbirds. In spring, they gather with more of their own kind to breed. Closer to the ground, another year-round resident hunts for ants. The pileated woodpecker uses its powerful beak to bore into trees and lick up the insects that are hiding inside. Some common mergansers have been in the region all winter as well, hunting in the few patches of open water. Now they mix with the recently arrived and much more numerous cormorant. Rainbow smelt, a species of small lakefish, have begun to run up the rivers. The cormorants and mergansers are waiting for them. Cormorants are expert divers. Their feathers aren't as oily as other birds. This makes them less waterproof, but also much better at swimming beneath the surface when paired with their webbed feet. Cormorant populations on the Great Lakes are in the process of a very strong rebound. In the early and mid-20th century, hunting and pesticides had decimated their numbers in the region. Their return in such large numbers has upset some fishermen in the area. But the truth is, popular game fish are only a small part of the cormorant's diet. Back on land, a small herd of grazers has moved into the fields after spending much of the winter under the cover of the forest. They're not a species familiar to most people in Ontario. White-tailed deer left the open fields earlier in the spring. They appeared there in herds to eat new grass shoots earlier on, but have split up since then, with many females returning to the forest to raise their fawns alone. Moose live in this region as well, but they never appear in herds, and rarely graze in open farmland. These are elk. Elk were introduced to parts of northern Ontario only recently to try and establish a permanent breeding population. Some are fitted with ear tags and radio collars to help track their movements. Because they are new to the area, it is important that they are monitored to make sure they're adjusting well and not having any negative impacts on their adoptive environment. Elk spend most of their time in single-sex herds. They graze fields for grasses and herbs, but also spend time in the forest, feeding on bark and twigs. Sometimes they move into agricultural fields and come into conflict with farmers. Elk are one of the largest species of deer in the world. In North America, only the moose is larger. They are a spectacular addition to the North Shore ecosystem. Spring is a time of return along the North Shore, the return of the warm sun, of millions of migrant birds, and of the plants that form the basis of life for all. Spring is a vast crescendo that builds towards the return of the season of growth and plenty. the long days and warm nights of summer